Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just have to say I'm just overwhelmed to be before the three of you, and there's nothing I can say that would thank you enough for all that you have done. Thank you so much. One of the things I wanted to accomplish, the only major thing I wanted to accomplish at this hearing, was to help to try to describe to the American people, because they don't know, you probably assume they do know, the current condition of our military. Now, I'm going to read something that you'll remember, and this is going to be to Dr. Shultz and Dr. Kissinger. This was 1983. It was Ronald Reagan. He was talking about how we should budget for our national security. I'm going to quote it. "We start by considering what must be done to maintain peace and review all the possible threats against our security. Then a strategy for strengthening peace, defending against those threats must be agreed upon. And finally, our defense establishment must evaluate to see what is necessary to protect against any and all potential threats. The cost of achieving these ends is totaled up, and the result is the budget for national defense." Does that sound good to you?
Right on the mark.
Dr. Kissinger? Do you agree with his statement in 1983, President Reagan?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The problem we have right now is we've watched what's happened to our force structure, and people don't realize. We've had, in a minute, I do want to ask you about the Ukraine, but when you think about the places where we should be and we could be and all of that, we have to consider that we don't have the capability that we've had in the past. We've always had that capability. Our policy has been to be able to defend America on two regional fronts, roughly that, if they change the words around a little bit, at the same time, two regional conflicts at the same time. We are not where we can do it right now. I'd like to ask the two of you how you evaluate our current condition of our military capability, starting with you, Dr. Kissinger.
With respect to Ukraine?
No, our overall military capability of our United States military. In strength,
yes,
size.
I think our capability is not adequate to deal with all the challenges that I see, yes, and with some of the commitments into which we may be moving, and needs to be reassessed carefully in the light of the shrinkage that has taken place on budgetary grounds in the recent decade.
Dr. Shultz, do you agree with that?
I think you have to recognize that a prime responsibility of the federal government is to provide for our security.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yes.
So one of the things, as you read from Ronald Reagan, one of the things he did was build up our military. He got a lot of objections from his budget director, but he said this is the number one thing. And as our economy improved, that things got better budgetarily, but still, let's build up our military. When he took office, we had the Vietnam syndrome, and our people were not even wearing their uniforms into the Pentagon. He said, stand up straight, be proud of yourself, wear your uniform. And then we had a military buildup of considerable size. And the statement was peace through strength. We actually did not use our forces very much because it was obvious to everybody that if we did, we'd win. So you better be careful, don't mess with us.
An excellent statement. Dr. Albright, I do agree with your position in Ukraine for probably a different reason. I happened to be there at the time of the election in November, and a lot of people don't realize what really happened, not just Poroshenko, but Yatsenyuk and the rest celebrating the first time in 96 years that they've rejected any communist seat in the parliament. It's never happened before. Now, in light of that, when the free world is looking at what's happening in Ukraine, what effect do you think that has on many of our allies the action that we have not taken there?
I think that we do need to help them defend themselves. Senator Yacht and I were there also for elections, and they took very many brave steps. The people of Ukraine had been disappointed by what had happened after the Orange Revolution in terms of their capability of being able to bring reforms into place. I think that generally, in the larger question, people do look at how we react when one country invades another and takes a piece of territory. That is, as both my colleagues here have said, it is breaking the international system. And therefore, I do think that it's important to take a strong stand there by providing capability of Ukrainians to defend themselves, but also that NATO, in fact, can and is taking steps in other parts of Central and Eastern Europe of providing some forces that move around, and NATO has been a very important part. I do think, if I might say, to the questions that you asked the others, I do think that I'm very concerned about sequestration and the deep cuts that have been taken, and I hope very much that this committee really moves on that, because I do think it jeopardizes America's military reach. As somebody who worked for Senator Muskie at the beginning of the budget process, I do know about Function 150 and 050, having defended 150 a long time. I also admire what Secretary Gates had said about the importance of providing some money for the foreign policy aspect of our budget, because in answer to many questions here, I think we are in the Middle East for a long time. And the military part of this is important, but we also have to recognize, and it's a little bit to what you said, George, in terms of the longer-term aspects there, where we need to figure out what the environment is that has created this particular mess and be able to use other tools of our policy to deal with that.
Thank you very much. My time has expired. If I could just ask one question for the record from Dr. Shultz. You outlined, I thought, a very good course of behavior for us in the United States. I'd like, for the record, for you to submit how we're doing relative to that course of behavior that you recommend. Thank you very much.
Could I say a word about the military? In considering the Ukraine issue, in my view, we should begin with the definition of the objective we are trying to reach, and then see which measures are the most suitable. I'm uneasy about beginning a process of military engagement without knowing where it will lead us and what we are willing to do to sustain it in order to avoid the experience that I mentioned before. Ukraine should be an independent state, free to develop its own relationships, with perhaps its special aspect with respect to NATO membership. It should be maintained within its existing borders, and Russian troops should be withdrawn as part of a settlement. But I believe we should avoid taking incremental steps before we know how far we are willing to go. This is a territory 300 miles from Moscow, and therefore has special security implications. That does not change my view of the outcome, which must be a free Ukraine. And it may include military measures as part of it. But I am uneasy when one speaks of military measures alone without having the strategy fully put forward.
Dr. Shultz, did you say, Secretary, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I agree totally with Henry's statement of where we want it to wind up as a free, independent Ukraine. But I think we have to be active in trying to help that come about. And I would point to two particular things that we should be doing. Number one, we should be organizing an energy effort to see to it that the countries around Russia are not totally dependent on Russian oil and gas, which has been used as a weapon. I'm interested to know that there is an LNG receiving ship in a port in Lithuania, and I think they're getting their LNG from Norwegian. But we have a lot of gas in this country. We should be ready to have LNG and get it there. There's plenty of oil around. It should get there. And we want to relieve those countries of this dependence on Russian oil and gas. And maybe it would teach them a little bit of lesson, because in addition to the low oil prices, they'll lose market share, probably permanently. But then I wouldn't hesitate. I think I'm here in Madeleine's camp. Let's do everything we can to train and equip decently the Ukrainian armed forces. They have boots on the ground. They're their boots. So, but let's help them be effective, because they're Russian boots on the ground. Don't anybody kid themselves about what's going on.
Thank you.